At 32 years old, she walked into one of Nigeria's most prestigious corporate towers, wearing clothes covered in dust, and the billionaire CEO laughed in her face. But what he didn't know was that the woman he mocked had just signed papers to buy his entire empire. What secret did Zinachidi hold that would soon turn his laughter into the greatest lesson of his life? Sit back with your popcorn and find out as we delve into this story. The morning sun cast long shadows across the glass towers of Victoria Island, Lagos. Golden Empire Holdings stood tall among them, a monument to wealth and power. Inside the massive lobby, marble floors gleamed under crystal chandeliers. Security guards in crisp uniforms stood at attention. Everything screamed money and status. Then the revolving door turned and she walked in. Zinachidi Obi stepped into the lobby, her simple wrapper and blouse covered in red dust from the long journey. Her shoes were worn, her hair tied back in a plain scarf. She carried only a small leather bag and an envelope in her hand. The receptionist looked up from her desk, her perfectly painted lips curling into a frown. From the executive elevator, Mr. Desmond had just stepped out. At 55, he was the CEO of Golden Empire Holdings, a man who had built his fortune through cunning business deals and ruthless negotiations. His custom-made suit probably cost more than most people's yearly salary. Diamond cufflinks caught the light as he moved. He stopped mid-stride when he saw Zinachidi. His eyes traveled from her dusty clothes to her worn shoes, and his face twisted with disgust. "Security!" he called out loudly. His voice echoed through the lobby. "What is this? When did we start allowing beggars into our building?" The security guards moved quickly towards Zinachidi. Other employees stopped what they were doing, turning to watch. Whispers filled the air. Some pulled out their phones, recording. Zinachidi stood calmly, her face showing no emotion. Her eyes, however, burned with quiet strength. "Sir," she said softly, her voice steady, "I am here for a meeting." Desmond threw his head back and laughed. It was a cruel, mocking sound. "A meeting? Dressed like that? Do you even know where you are? This is Golden Empire Holdings, not a charity center." His executives gathered behind him, some smirking, others looking uncomfortable but saying nothing. "Look at you," Desmond continued, walking closer. He circled her slowly, making a show of inspecting her appearance. "Covered in dust like you just crawled out of a village farm. And you dare to walk into my building claiming you have a meeting." Zinachidi's fingers tightened slightly on the envelope she held, but her voice remained calm. "You shouldn't judge a person by the dust on their clothes, sir." "Oh?" Desmond's eyes gleamed with amusement. "Is that so? Let me tell you something, woman. In this world, appearance is everything. If you can't even afford to dress properly, you have no business here. Now get out before I have you thrown out." The security guards reached for Zinachidi's arms, but she raised one hand gently. "I will leave," she said quietly. "But first I came to deliver this." She held out the envelope to Desmond. He stared at it for a moment, then snatched it from her hand, with disgust, as if even touching something she held was beneath him. "Whatever this is, it's going straight to the trash," he said loudly, waving the envelope in the air for everyone to see. Zinachidi looked him directly in the eyes. Her voice was soft, but every word carried weight. "The same dust you see on my clothes, Mr. Desmond, is the soil where I planted my dreams. One day soon, you will remember this moment." Without waiting for a response, she turned and walked toward the exit. Her head was held high, her steps steady and dignified. The lobby doors closed behind her, and she was gone. Desmond tossed the envelope on the reception desk without opening it. "Clear that trash!" he ordered, then walked back to his elevator, still chuckling. "Some people really don't know their place," he said to his executives as the elevator doors closed. But what Mr. Desmond didn't know was that inside that envelope was a letter from the board of directors. A letter that would change everything. A letter that informed him of an emergency shareholders meeting scheduled for the following week. And the reason for that meeting? A new majority shareholder had just purchased 65% of Golden Empire Holdings. The name on the acquisition papers? Zinachidi Obi. But to understand how a woman covered in dust could buy an empire, we must go back to where it all began. Back to the days when Zinachidi was not an investor, but a bread seller on the streets of Lagos. 20 years earlier, Zinachidi was just 12 years old when her father died. His name was Emmanuel Obi, and he had been a hard-working man who owned a small transport business. He had 3 buses and employed several drivers. The family was not rich, but they lived comfortably. Everything changed when a large corporation, Golden Empire Holdings, moved into their neighborhood. They wanted to build a new office complex, and Emmanuel's small transport station stood in their way. The company offered him money for the land, but it was far less than what the property was worth. When Emmanuel refused to sell, they made his life impossible. His business permits were mysteriously revoked. His buses were impounded for fake violations. Within 6 months, everything he had built was destroyed. One evening, Emmanuel sat with 12-year-old Zinachidi on their small veranda. His face was tired, his eyes filled with pain. "My daughter," he said softly, holding her small hands. "Remember this day. Remember what powerful people can do to the powerless. But also remember this. True power is not in crushing others. It is in lifting them." 2 weeks later, Emmanuel died of a heart attack. The doctors said it was stress. Zinachidi knew it was a broken heart. Her mother tried to hold things together, but without Emmanuel's income, they lost their home. They moved to Ajagunle, one of Lagos's poorest neighborhoods. There, in a single room, Zinachidi's mother started selling bread. At 13, Zinachidi joined her mother. Every morning before school, she would carry a large basin of bread on her head and walk through the streets shouting, "Fresh bread. Buy your fresh bread." The other children mocked her. "Bread seller. Bread seller," they would chant as she passed. But Zinachidi never stopped. She remembered her father's words. She remembered the injustice that had killed him. Years passed. Zinachidi finished secondary school through sheer determination. She would wake at 4 a.m. to sell bread, go to school, then sell again in the evening. Her mother often cried seeing her daughter work so hard. "Mama," Zinachidi would say, wiping her mother's tears, "I am planting seeds. One day we will harvest." When Zinachidi turned 18, something changed. She had saved every kobo from her bread sales. With that money, she started buying bread in bulk from the bakery at a discount and reselling it to small shops. The profit was small, but it was progress. One day, while making deliveries, she met an old woman named Mama Grace. The woman owned a small provision store but was too sick to manage it well. "My daughter," Mama Grace said weakly, "I am too old, too tired. Can you help me run this store? I will give you a share of the profit." Zinachidi agreed. She managed Mama Grace's store so well that profits doubled within 3 months. When Mama Grace passed away a year later, she left the store to Zinachidi in her will. Now, at 19, Zinachidi owned her first business. But she didn't stop there. She used the store as collateral to get a small loan. With that loan, she bought goods in bulk from manufacturers and supplied to other small retailers across Lagos. The margins were tight, but Zinachidi was disciplined. She reinvested every profit. By 22, she owned 3 stores. By 25, she had expanded into importation, bringing in goods from China and distributing across Nigeria. Her business was growing, but Zinachidi remained humble. She still lived simply. She still remembered the days of selling bread. At 27, something extraordinary happened. Zinachidi attended a trade conference in Accra, Ghana. There she met Mr. Chen, a Chinese investor looking for reliable partners in Africa. While other business people at the conference wore expensive suits and bragged about their connections, Zinachidi simply presented her business records. "Your numbers are honest," Mr. Chen said, impressed. "No exaggeration, no lies. This is rare." He offered her a partnership. With his investment and her local knowledge, they built a distribution network across West Africa. Within 3 years, Zinachidi had become one of the most successful business owners in Nigeria. But few people knew her name. She operated quietly, building wealth without seeking attention. At 30, she partnered with a group of international investors to form an investment firm. They trusted her completely because she had proven herself over and over. Together they began acquiring struggling companies, restructuring them, and making them profitable again. And then, one day, Zinachidi saw a name on a list of companies available for acquisition. Golden Empire Holdings, the same company that had destroyed her father. For 2 years she watched and waited. She studied the company's operations. She learned that despite its impressive exterior, Golden Empire was drowning in debt. Mr. Desmond had made careless investments. He had borrowed heavily to maintain his lavish lifestyle. The company was on the verge of collapse. Through her international partners, Zinachidi quietly began buying shares. The process took months. The shareholders were eager to sell because the company was failing. One by one, she acquired them. By the time the board realized what was happening, it was too late. Zinachidi Obi now owned 65% of Golden Empire Holdings. The day before she walked into that lobby, she had been traveling from Abuja, where the final papers were signed. Her flight had been delayed. She had driven through dusty roads to reach Lagos in time. That's why her clothes were dusty when she arrived. She could have gone home to change. She could have worn expensive designer clothes. But Zinachidi chose not to. She wanted to see the truth of the man who now worked for her. She wanted to know what kind of person Mr. Desmond really was. And now she knew. 1 week later, the boardroom of Golden Empire Holdings was filled with tension. The long mahogany table was surrounded by executives in expensive suits. Mr. Desmond sat at the head, confident and relaxed. He had thrown away the envelope that day without reading it. He had missed several calls from the board chairman because he was too busy enjoying his weekend at his private beach house. Now, finally forced to attend this emergency meeting, he sat with an annoyed expression on his face. "Can we make this quick?" he said, checking his gold watch. "I have a golf appointment at 2 p.m. The board chairman, Mr. Adeyemi, cleared his throat nervously. "Mr. Desmond, this meeting is about a significant change in company ownership." Desmond waved his hand dismissively. "Whatever it is, handle it. That's what I pay you people for." "Sir," Mr. Adeyemi continued, his voice shaking slightly, "there has been a major acquisition of company shares. We now have a new majority shareholder." "Majority shareholder?" Desmond sat up, frowning. "What are you talking about? I own the majority shares." "Not anymore, sir. You own 25%. The new shareholder owns 65%. The room went silent. Desmond's face turned red. "That's impossible! Who would dare—" The boardroom door opened. Every head turned. And there she stood. Zinachidi Obi walked in. But this time she was not covered in dust. She wore a simple but elegant business suit. Her hair was neatly styled. She carried a leather briefcase. But what hadn't changed were her eyes. Those same calm, powerful eyes. Desmond's mouth dropped open. The color drained from his face. "You," he whispered. "The beggar from last week." "Not a beggar, Mr. Desmond," Zinachidi said calmly, taking a seat at the table. "Your new majority shareholder." The executives gasped. Some started whispering. Desmond stood up, his hands shaking. "This is a joke. This is some kind of sick joke." "It is not a joke," Mr. Adeyemi said quickly, sliding documents across the table. "These are the acquisition papers. All legal, all verified. Miss Obi now controls this company." Desmond grabbed the papers, his eyes scanning frantically. His hands trembled as the truth sank in. He looked up at Zinachidi, his face a mixture of shock, anger, and fear. "How?" he stammered. "How did you—" Zinachidi folded her hands on the table. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but filled with strength. "The same dust you mock me for, Mr. Desmond, was the soil I planted my dreams in. While you were busy judging people by their appearance, I was busy building. While you were laughing at me, I was closing the biggest deal of my life." "This is impossible," Desmond said, but his voice had lost its power. "You can't just take my company." "I didn't take it," Zinachidi corrected gently. "I bought it. Every share legally purchased. Your company was failing, Mr. Desmond. Your debts were mounting. Your shareholders were desperate to sell. I gave them a way out." One of the executives leaned forward. Miss Obi, what are your plans for the company? Zinachidi opened her briefcase and pulled out a folder. First, we will conduct a full audit. Every transaction, every contract, every deal made in the last 10 years. I want complete transparency. Desmond's face went pale. Several executives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. As I suspected, Zinachidi said quietly, watching their reactions. There is corruption here. Money that has been stolen. Contracts awarded to friends and family. Workers cheated out of their wages. She looked directly at Desmond. 20 years ago, this company destroyed a good man. His name was Emmanuel Obi. He was my father. The room went silent. Desmond's eyes widened in recognition. Obi, he whispered. The transport owner. The one who refused to sell his land. The one you crushed, Zinachidi said, her voice steady though pain flickered in her eyes. The one whose business you destroyed with bribes and fake violations. The one who died of a broken heart, leaving his wife and daughter with nothing. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but she did not wipe them away. I was that daughter, Mr. Desmond. I was 12 years old when I watched my father break. I was 13 when I started selling bread on the streets to survive. Every day, I carried that basin on my head and walked through Lagos, being mocked, being laughed at, being looked down upon. Her voice grew stronger, but I never stopped. I never gave up, because my father taught me something before he died. He taught me that true power is not in crushing others, it is in lifting them. She stood up and every eye in the room followed her. So here is what will happen. Mr. Desmond, you are relieved of your duties as CEO, effective immediately. Desmond collapsed back into his chair, his face in his hands. However, Zinachidi continued, I am not a destroyer. I am a builder. You will not be fired. Instead, you will be reassigned. Desmond looked up, confused. Reassigned? Yes, for the next 6 months. You will work as my personal driver. The room erupted in shocked whispers. Desmond's face turned red with humiliation. A driver? You want me to be your driver? Yes, Zinachidi said firmly. You need to learn something, Mr. Desmond. You need to learn what it means to serve. You need to understand the value of every person, regardless of their position. You spent your whole life looking down on people. Now you will learn to look up. I won't do it, Desmond said, standing up. I'll resign. I'll walk away right now. You can, Zinachidi said calmly. But if you do, I will ensure that every corrupt deal you've ever made becomes public. The bribes, the fraud, the lives you've destroyed. I have all the evidence. Or you can accept this opportunity to change, to learn, to become the man you should have been. Desmond stood there, trapped. Slowly the fight left his body. He sank back into his chair, defeated. 6 months, Zinachidi said softly. 6 months of honest work. 6 months of humility. After that, we will see what kind of man you have become. The next morning, Mr. Desmond stood beside a black SUV in the company parking lot. He wore a simple driver's uniform. His hands, which had once signed million-dollar deals, now held car keys. When Zinachidi came out, he opened the door for her, his face burning with shame. Good morning, Mr. Desmond, she said gently. Morning, he muttered, unable to meet her eyes. As they drove through Lagos traffic, Zinachidi worked on her laptop in the back seat. Desmond watched her through the rearview mirror. He wanted to hate her. He wanted to be angry. But deep down, he knew she was right. He had become a monster. Days turned into weeks. Every morning, Desmond picked up Zinachidi. He drove her to meetings, waited outside, then drove her home. At first, he was bitter and resentful. But slowly, something changed. One rainy afternoon, while waiting outside a meeting venue, Desmond noticed an elderly woman struggling to cross the busy street. Her umbrella had broken, and she stood at the roadside, afraid to move. Without thinking, Desmond got out of the car. He opened his own umbrella and walked to the woman. Mama, let me help you, he said softly. The woman looked up at him, surprised. Together they crossed the street slowly. When they reached the other side, the woman squeezed his hand. God bless you, my son. Not many people would stop for an old woman like me. Those words pierced Desmond's heart. When was the last time he had helped someone without expecting something in return? When had he last seen people as human beings instead of obstacles or opportunities? That evening when Zinachidi returned to the car, she noticed something different in Desmond's eyes. There was a softness there that hadn't been before. Another day, while driving through Ajagunle, the car got stuck in heavy traffic. Young boys selling water rushed to the vehicle. Desmond's first instinct was to wave them away angrily, as he always had. But this time, he stopped himself. Instead, he rolled down the window and bought water from every single boy. He paid them far more than the water cost. The boys' faces lit up with joy and surprise. One of them, no more than 10 years old, looked at Desmond with wide eyes. "Uncle, thank you." "God will bless you!" Desmond's hands trembled on the steering wheel. That boy could have been Zinachidi 20 years ago. That boy could have been any child whose life he had destroyed through his greed. From the back seat, Zinachidi watched everything. She said nothing, but a small smile touched her lips. The transformation was beginning. One morning, 3 months into his service, Desmond arrived early to pick up Zinachidi. As he waited, he saw the security guard at her residence, struggling to fix a broken gate. The guard was an older man, his hands shaking as he tried to lift the heavy metal. Before his 6 months as a driver, Desmond would have honked impatiently, demanding someone else fix it faster. Now he got out of the car, removed his jacket, and helped the guard. Together they repaired the gate. The guard was speechless. "Sir, you didn't have to do that. You're a driver for Madame Zinachidi. This is not your work." Desmond wiped sweat from his forehead and smiled. Every honest work is honorable work. We all serve in different ways. When Zinachidi came out and saw what had happened, tears filled her eyes. This was not the same man who had mocked her in that lobby. This was not the same CEO who had destroyed her father. This was a man being reborn. As months passed, Desmond's transformation became complete. He started greeting the cleaners by name. He helped the gatemen carry heavy loads. He listened to people's stories instead of dismissing them. He began volunteering at a local orphanage on weekends, spending time with children who had nothing. One evening, 6 months after his demotion, Desmond stood again in the boardroom. But this time he stood humbly before the board as Zinachidi addressed them. "Mr. Desmond has completed his 6 months," she announced. "I have watched him closely. I have seen genuine change, and so I am offering him a new position." Desmond held his breath. "I am making you Director of Community Relations," Zinachidi said. "Your job will be to find small businesses that are struggling. Businesses like my father's was. You will help them, support them, lift them up instead of crushing them." Tears rolled down Desmond's face. "Why?" he asked, his voice breaking. "After everything I've done, why are you giving me another chance?" Zinachidi smiled. "Because that is what my father would have done. He believed in second chances. He believed in redemption." Desmond fell to his knees. "I'm sorry," he sobbed. "I'm so sorry for what I did to your father. I'm sorry for the lives I destroyed. I'm sorry for the man I was." Zinachidi walked over and gently helped him stand. "I forgive you, Mr. Desmond. Now go and be the man you were meant to be." The other executives in the room were moved to tears. Some had witnessed Desmond's cruelty for years. Now they were witnessing his rebirth. One of them stood and began clapping. Soon the entire room was applauding, not for the old Desmond, but for the new man standing before them. 5 years later, Golden Empire Holdings was transformed. Under Zinachidi's leadership, the company became known not just for profit, but for purpose. They built schools in poor neighborhoods. They funded scholarships for children who couldn't afford education. They supported small businesses instead of crushing them. Zinachidi established the Emmanuel Obi Foundation in her father's memory. Every year they gave grants to young entrepreneurs who were struggling, just as she had once struggled. Desmond became the foundation's most passionate advocate. He spent his days traveling to villages, finding talented young people who needed support. The man who once destroyed lives was now building them. He personally mentored over 50 young entrepreneurs, sharing both his mistakes and his redemption story. His testimony became powerful because he never hid his past. In schools and churches, he would speak openly about the man he used to be and the grace that had transformed him. One afternoon, Zinachidi stood at the opening ceremony of a new school in Ajagunle, the same neighborhood where she had once sold bread. Children in clean uniforms sang and danced. Their parents watched with tears of joy. Desmond stood beside her, no longer as an employee, but as a trusted partner and friend. An elderly woman approached Zinachidi. She was bent with age, her hands wrinkled and shaking. "Excuse me, madam," the woman said softly. "Do you remember me?" Zinachidi looked closely. Then her eyes widened. "Mama Rosemary, you used to buy bread from me every morning." "Yes," the woman laughed, tears streaming down her face. "I remember you as a small girl, carrying that heavy basin on your head. Look at you now. Look at what you have become." They embraced, both crying. "You always told me to never give up," Zinachidi said. "You said my struggles were preparing me for greatness." "And I was right," Mama Rosemary said, holding Zinachidi's face in her wrinkled hands. "Your father would be so proud." Desmond watched this reunion, his own eyes wet with tears. He thought about all the Mama Rosemarys he had ignored in his life, all the people whose struggles he had dismissed. Never again. That evening, Zinachidi and Desmond stood together at Emmanuel Obi's grave. Fresh flowers lay at the headstone. Zinachidi knelt down, touching the cold marble. "Papa," she whispered, "I did it. I took the dust they mocked me for and turned it into gold. I took the pain and turned it into purpose. Golden Empire Holdings is now a force for good. The same company that destroyed you is now lifting others." Desmond knelt beside her, his voice thick with emotion. "Mr. Obi, I never met you, but I destroyed you. I was part of the system that broke you. I cannot undo that, but I promise you for the rest of my life, I will honor your memory by lifting others the way your daughter has lifted me." They stayed there in silence as the sun set behind them, casting a golden light on the grave. Two people who should have been enemies, now united in purpose. That night, Zinachidi couldn't sleep. She stood on her balcony looking out over Lagos. The city lights sparkled like stars. She thought about her journey, from bread seller to billionaire, from mockery to respect, from dust to gold. Her phone rang. It was Mr. Chen, her Chinese partner from years ago. "Zinachidi," he said warmly, "I just heard about the new factory you're opening in Kano. You're creating 2,000 jobs. I'm proud of you." "Thank you, Mr. Chen." Zinachidi replied, "You believed in me when I had nothing but honest numbers. And you've proven that integrity is the greatest investment," he said. "That's why I'm calling. I want to partner with you on a new project, a Pan-African initiative to support women entrepreneurs across the continent." Zinachidi's heart soared. "Yes, let's do it. Let's create opportunities for women who are where I once was." After the call ended, she remained on the balcony. Her mother, now living comfortably in a beautiful home Zinachidi had built for her, called. "My daughter, why are you still awake?" "Mama, I'm just thinking," Zinachidi said softly. "Thinking about everything. About Papa. About the journey." Her mother's voice was gentle. "Your father visits me in my dreams, you know. He smiles and says, 'Our daughter has made us proud.' Not because of the money, Zinachidi, but because of your heart." Those words brought tears to Zinachidi's eyes. The next morning there was a surprise visitor at Golden Empire Holdings. A young woman no more than 19 stood nervously in the reception. Her clothes were simple, her shoes worn. She carried a small bag and a business proposal written on cheap paper. The new receptionist, who had been trained personally by Zinachidi, smiled warmly at her. "Welcome. How may I help you?" I want to see Madam Zinachidi," the girl stammered. "I have a business idea. I saved money from selling vegetables, and I want to start a small farm. Someone told me Madam Zinachidi helps people like me." The receptionist's smile widened. "Please sit down. Let me get you some water and call her office." 30 minutes later, Zinachidi herself came down to the reception. When she saw the young woman, she saw herself 20 years ago. Come with me, Zinachidi said gently, leading her to a comfortable meeting room. For the next hour, she listened to the girl's story, a story of struggle, of dreams, of determination. When the girl finished, Zinachidi said, I will fund your farm, but more than that, I will mentor you. I will teach you everything I know. The girl burst into tears. Why? Why would you help someone like me? Zinachidi took her hand. Because someone once helped me, and because I know that true wealth is not in what you own, but in who you lift. As the girl left the office full of hope and excitement, Desmond entered. He had witnessed the whole thing from outside. You're creating another success story, he said with a smile. No, Zinachidi corrected. I'm giving her the same chance someone gave me. The rest is up to her. Desmond nodded. I have something to tell you. Remember that orphanage I volunteer at? Yes, what about it? One of the boys there, his name is Emmanuel. He's 12 years old, sharp mind, brilliant in mathematics. But he's about to drop out because the orphanage can't afford his school fees. Zinachidi's eyes lit up. Emmanuel? Like my father? Yes, it felt like a sign. I've been sponsoring him privately for 3 months. But I wanted to ask if the foundation could give him a full scholarship. Not just school, but mentorship. I see myself in that boy, before I became corrupted by greed. Bring him to me, Zinachidi said immediately. Any child named Emmanuel will never lack while I'm alive. And so the cycle continued. Zinachidi lifting others, Desmond restoring what he had once destroyed, the Emanuel Obi Foundation touching thousands of lives, Golden Empire Holdings becoming a symbol not of oppression, but of hope. 1 year later, at the Foundation's annual gala, Zinachidi stood before hundreds of guests, entrepreneurs who had been helped, children who had been educated, families who had been restored. My father once told me that true power is not in crushing others, but in lifting them, she began. For too long, this company represented the opposite. But today, I stand here to tell you that transformation is possible, not just for companies, but for people. She gestured to Desmond, who stood nearby. This man once represented everything wrong with corporate greed. Today, he represents redemption. If he can change, anyone can change. Desmond stepped forward, his voice steady. I destroyed Zinachidi's father. I destroyed countless lives. For years, I thought power meant having people beneath me. I was wrong. True power means lifting people up. I cannot undo my past, but I can build a better future. The room erupted in applause. That evening, as guests mingled and shared stories, the young vegetable seller who Zinachidi had funded a year ago approached the stage. Her name was Grace, and she now owned a thriving farm, employing 30 people. Madam Zinachidi, Grace said, her voice shaking with emotion. Because you believed in me, I now employ others. Because you lifted me, I can now lift others. This is not just business. This is legacy. Zinachidi embraced her, tears flowing freely. This was it. This was the true measure of success. Not the buildings, not the bank accounts, but the lives transformed. As the night drew to a close, Zinachidi stood once more at her father's grave. The moon was full, casting silver light on the marble. Papa, she whispered, they mocked me for being covered in dust. They laughed at me for being poor. But you taught me that seeds must be planted in soil before they can grow. That dust was my soil, and from it, I have grown a forest of hope. She placed her hand on the grave. Your death was not in vain. Your suffering birthed my purpose, and your legacy will live forever through every life we touch, every person we lift, every dream we make possible. The wind whispered through the trees, and for a moment Zinachidi felt her father's presence. She felt his approval. She felt his love. And so ended the story of Zinachidi Obi, the bread seller who became a billionaire, not through bitterness and revenge, but through grace and redemption. The girl covered in dust who showed the world that your past does not define your future. Your response to pain determines your destiny. She proved that the soil of struggle can grow gardens of greatness, and that true wealth is measured not in what you own, but in who you lift. Dear viewers, Zinachidi's story teaches us something very powerful. Never judge a person by their appearance or current situation. The person you mock today may become the one who changes your life tomorrow. True power is not in crushing others, but in lifting them. And sometimes, the greatest victories come not through revenge, but through redemption. What do you think about Zinachidi's journey? How do you think Desmond's transformation impacted his life? Share your thoughts in the comments section. I would love to read from you. There is another very interesting story I'll be uploading in a few days. So make sure you subscribe to my channel and turn on your notification bell, so you'll be the first to know when it drops. If you enjoyed this story, please hit the like button and share it with your friends. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next story.